Levantotas. Señor, ¿me escuchas? Amigo, amigo, señor Héctor, ¿me oyes? ¿Me oyes? ¿Sí me escuchas? Héctor, ¿me oyes? Sí, 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 sí. Bueno, no, señor Héctor, ¿me oyes? Don Héctor, ¿me oyes? Amigo, amigo, You move the reading table or leaving the?
And the table's good.
It's okay? Okay, thank you. You need to open the office? ¿Ya está prendido todo o no? ¿Ya está todo? Ok, gracias. Dale. Ok.
Yeah, the office outside of Rabbit Shorten's office.
This is all we have now. We don't have water cups.
They don't want, well, they don't have glass, so you don't want to use the plastic, so that's what they're doing now.
No, I don't like anything associated with coffee. I hate coffee.
Oh.
Hate it. I don't like any reason that I end up tasting the coffee. Yeah, coffee's so nasty.
Yeah, never I could either.
I can't stand it.
Joey, good to see you. Good shot. Good Chavez versa.
Alright, I'll stick it on.
Hello. Good to see you.
Smoked fish, yeah. Do they have any of that?
But on this, fruit is the most important.
No, today it's rather scant. It's rather scant. They don't even have the tomatoes.
Well, no fruit. That's
Bagel
ridiculous. But
just
they have
doesn't,
cholents.
cream cheese doesn't make it unless it's there's tomatoes.
Cholents, and they say no.
It just doesn't make it.
Right.
It's so funny. Otherwise, it's just bread and schmear. Yeah. You need some
Usually they have
to
a
reach
lot
its
more.
potential. A bagel
What can
needs
you do?
tomatoes.
Right.
Thank you. I'm glad you're doing this.
We have coffee. You do.
I only saw the cold coffee.
They have hot.
I was saying I only saw the cold coffee, not the cold coffee.
Right. It's really important. Right. It's harder and harder to make the menu here because of summertime.
That's why I just let it come out and we tried.
You have them?
I don't know what's coming in once. I haven't heard notices of people and go to the shops. Some months ago saying that they need to do that. So that's an important.
I haven't heard it. I just know in general you need more people.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago we were okay. We were able to start right on time.
When you don't start on time, it limits your time to teach.
Yeah. And you can't send out a message until the week.
Exactly.
It's a SOS. I hear Michael's SOS.
Sending out an SOS.
You hear from Michael Harris. Oh, okay.
Does anyone want to leave? Like have something that they want to leave?
Something we want to leave.
Like
I believe.
Alan can do it all.
Oh, thank you. Dan says I can do it all. I say thank you, but no thank you.
That's fine.
Maybe
I'm happy to do it all. I just
If
want
you
to
didn't take
yeah.
something.
I've got a lot of leading to. I'll give this survival, give someone else a chance. Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Can I ask you a question, Rabbi Siegel?
Yeah.
Sorry, do you say on Male Monday,
Um,
Minyan Monday morning, or is because my mom's your site Al Shalom is Tisha B'Av,
I think that they still should on Monday. They won't on Thursday.
but they will tomorrow.
On Monday.
On Monday. Oh, pardon me, Monday. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so say it Monday then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure exactly.
We give people 1 or 2 minutes.
I'm just kind of like,
See if we can make.
we'll see. I had to change the appointment. I had a doctor's appointment on Thursday morning. Oh my God, that's a shut up. I can't do that. It wasn't critical.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, it's, I'm having some ear surgery, scrape away the cancer, the very beginning of cancer on the ear, but a mass thing, I'm not sure what it is exactly. They cut a little bit of away, they see if that's enough, if it's not, they go back. And I can do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't want you to feel voluntold at all. I don't want you to feel voluntold.
Oh, no.
But I will need people to take Aliyot and Hanbah and all that, because that I can't all do by myself.
I'll be pleased to take it out.
Okay, great.
One more coming. That means that's still a second. Were you at Beitenu, John?
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
No Beitenu now until high holidays, I think.
Everything is combined, which probably makes sense because so many people are away and might as well have everything together.
Yeah, we hit a minion pretty early on into Shakri, but we didn't start like 9:30. We didn't start with one.
I'm very worried about Temple Bethel because there's a possibility it's going to be demolished.
Oh, it's more than a possibility. It's being sold and demolished. Temple Bethel. No, the one Hollywood Temple
No,
Bethel.
that may not happen. That's still being debated right now. I checked. That's still being debated.
Okay.
That has not passed. Because it also houses Touro College, it houses a preschool. That's being debated. But I'm worried if they.
For those of you waiting on live stream, we're just gonna wait like 1 or 2 more minutes in the hopes of getting a minion. We're waiting on, I think, 1 more, but we'll start in a minute or 2 regardless.
That's where the money is.
Edward G. Robinson, Louis B. Mayer, they all belong to that. I'm really worried about what may happen.
Yeah, well, they did not.
No,
They did not grant it historical thing because there have been so many addendums and changes.
No, I know.
to it.
I just mean
Okay,
growing up here, it's historical ours.
Okay,
Yes.
here's this will definitely generate money for the landlords, the Iranian American Jewish Federation, the IAF, the IAJF, but and the IAJF has said all the displaced congregations that use it, all their tenants, they're going to find another place for them. That's worrisome also. That's really worrisome. A lot of the congregants, they walk to the shore. They walk. They live in the area. They walk. I'm really worried about that.
We're gonna get started and hope that a minion arrives shortly. We're on page 214 for Mincha for Shabbat, beginning with Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Od Yahalu Chasela, Ashrei Am Shekach Lo, Ashrei Am Shanai Eloha, Yilale David. Amen. Tehillat Adonai Yadaber Pi, Vivarech Kol Basar Shem Kocho L'Olam Va'ed, V'anachnu Nevarech Yam, Me'atav Yad Olam Hallelujah, Uvaletzion Goel, Shvei Pesha B'Yakov Ne'um Adonai. V'ata Kadosh Yoshev Tehilot Yisrael, V'karazel Zev Ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevot, Melech Haaretz Kevodo. V'tisaini ruach v'ashma acharei kol rash gadol, Baruch Kevod Adonai mimkomo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Vayivdechu v'chayodei shemecha, ki lo azavta dorshecha Adonai, Adonai chavitz l'ma'an tziko, yagdil Torah ve'adir. Chatzi Kaddish is on the bottom of page 217, please rise. Yitkadav yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra kirtei, ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yamechon, u'b'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agalav b'zman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach, le'olam omei omaya. Yiparach v'ishtabach, v'pa'ar v'traman v'yitnaseh, v'tadar v'taleh v'talal, shemei dekudesha brichu, le'lam min kol birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. V'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chazdecha, aneni be'emet yishacha. Vayhivin Saharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kumad Naivia Futuai Vecha, Vanusu Mesanecha Mipanecha, Kimitzion Tetze Torah, Udavar Adonai Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael, Daglu Adonai Iti, Uneroma Mashamo Yachtav, Echad Adonai Hadua, Hadura V'Tiper V'Anetach Do we have a Torah reader? Oh, okay. Well then, I might need you to reshow that, and this is going to be a little choppy, probably.
Rabbi, forgive me.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I change my mind and do a Molly today? Because
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
list
fine.
Minyanim for Monday.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
we can do Amale after the Torah reading. For sure. Do you mind?
Parshat Vet Hanan can be found in your Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 1005. if you're following along at home from a different Chumash or a Tanakh, open to chapter 3, verse 23 of the book of Deuteronomy.
What does it say?
1005. What stage? 1005. The time. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Can you Gabbai Rishon?
Okay.
And then we'll need a Gabbai Shani as well.
On this side then?
What? Yeah.
Okay.
I'll lane. It will be. Yeah. Is anyone else at least able to follow along in the Hebrew? Okay, great. Yeah, that's fine. And then we'll need 3 aliyot worth. Does any? Okay. I think did you say you'd take an aliyah? So you'll take the Rishon instead, if that's all right.
Okay.
And then
Whatever you
Shani.
want.
Shani and then Shlishi. Do you want to know? Shlishi? Can I give you Shani? Can I give you Shani? Oh, okay. It doesn't make a difference. Whatever you want. Okay. Yeah. Can I give you Shani and then Shlishi to? Yeah. Thank you. All right. This is gonna be choppy because I did not know if it's reading.
I got your back.
Okay. Great. Joey.
Going to power page forward.
Yeah. Yep.
Tigala Vitira Makatol Bidman Karo Biachan Athene Flitama Be Israel Athene lots of them are Amen.
Amen.
Kul Habaguda Lilhin Chavod La Torah Yamod
Abraham Ben Zev Ufruma.
Aram Ben Zevu Fruma Arishona Baruch Shatan Trelem Israel Bitu Shato
Vatemudina Elohim Hayom Gohem Hayom.
This part I know.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Ba'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Shebach Rabanu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. That Hanan El Adonai Be'itahi Lemor. Adonai Elohim Atah Hachilota leharot et avdecha et kodlecha ve'et yadcha hachazaka asher mi el bashamayim uva'aretz asher ya'aseh kima'asecha uchborotecha ha'avarana et ha'aretz hatova asher be'avor hayarden be'ever hayarden ha'har ha'tov hazeh ve'halvanon ve'yitavor Adonai ve'yitaver Adonai bim Leman'chem ve'lo shama elai Vayamar Adonai Elai Rav Lach Al Tosef Davar Elai Daber Elai Od Bedavar Hazeh Ala Rosh Ale Rosh Hapiska הפסגה, ושא עיניך
Yama.
יעמד צפונה ותימנה ומזרחה, ורואה בעיניך כי וראה בעיניך כי לא תעבור את הירדן הזה, וצו את יהושע והזכהו באמצעהו, כי הוא יעבור לפני העם הזה, והוא ינחיל אותה את הארץ אשר תראה, ונשב בגיימו בית פאור.
יישר כוח, יישר כוח. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נצר בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yamod.
Gershon ben Moshe v'Shoshana.
Gershon ben Moshe B'Shoshana Aliyaha Shini. Page 1006, beginning of chapter 4.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaBarach. Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'elam Ba'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Baruch Rabanu Mikol Amim Benatan LeTorah. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. ואתה ישראל שמע את החוקים ואל המשפטים אשר אנוכי מלמד אתכם לעשות למען תחיו ובאתם וירשתם את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהי אבותיכם נותן לכם. לא תוסיפו על הדבר אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם, ולא תגרעו ממנו לשמור את מצוות אדוני אלוהיכם אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם, עיניכם לראות את אשר עשה אדוני בבעל פאור, כי כל האיש אשר הולך אחרי בעל פאור, השמידו אדוני אלוהיכם מקרבך, ואתם הדביקים באדוני אלוהיכם חיים כולכם היום.
Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chayei Natan Etochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Talmud. Abraham. Martalea. Hashlishit. Page 1007, verse 5.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim Benatan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
אמן. ראה למדתי אתכם חוקים ומשפטים כאשר ציווני אדוני אלוהי לעשות כן בקרב הארץ אשר אתם באים שמה לרשתם, ושמרתם ועשיתם כי היא חוכמתכם ובינתכם לעיני העמים אשר ישמעון את כל החוקים האלה ואמרו רק אם חכם ונבון הגוי הגדול הזה, כי מי גוי גדול אשר לא אלוהים קרובים אליו כאדוני אלוהינו בכל קראנו אליו, ומי גוי גדול אשר לו חוקים ומשפטים צדיקים ככל התורה הזאת אשר אנוכי נתן לפניכם היום.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Does anyone want Gleela?
Get the chair over here. It's a little heavier, huh?
Yamud. Minha. Gizot HaTorah Asher Sa Moshe Lifnei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai Miyad Moshe Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazdikim Ba V'tomechei Medushar Eitz Chaim Hi Lamachazdikim Ba V'tomechei Medushar Dirachei Darchei Noam V'chol Netivotei Shalom Dirachei Darchei Noam V'chol Netivotei Shalom Ay 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 Yorech Yanim Bimina Bismillah Asher B'chavod Adonai Chavetz Levantika Yagdiel
Torah. I know we have at least one El Malay. Were there others who were hoping to have El Malay said? Who did you want El Malay said for?
For my mother, Oliver Shalom.
Okay. I'll pause halfway through and then if you can say her name. Thank you. El Malay Rachamim Shochim Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kizor Harakia Mazhirim Lenishmat
Shendel Bas Yitzhak V'chaya.
Shendel Bat Yitzchak V'chaya Shehalcha Le'olama Began Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Baal Rachamim Hastira B'Seter Knafecha Le'olamim Utzror B'Tzor Chaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Would you like to say a couple words about your mother?
Thank you, Rabbi. My mom, Sonia Bogan, they were members when I was little. We've been members from Beth Eden. My gosh, used to, anytime Rabbi Jack would speak, we had to be there early. And my mom, Oliver Shalom, was so grateful to Rabbi Klickfeld and to everybody that was there for her, and through good times and through bad times. But I want to say thank you, Rabbi, so much for letting me say Rachamim. There was a Holocaust survivor, both my parents, and they came via Philadelphia to her 11th yahrzeit, and I miss her dearly. She was an amazing person, amazing, gave so much chesed to the community my whole life. Thank you. Toda.
Baruch, may your memory be for a blessing.
Thank you.
We'll continue with the returning of the Torah, which is found on page 221. Yahavu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Ki lachach tov natati lachem, torati al tazavu, Eitz chaim chila machazikim ba, betomcha meusha, derachecha darchei noam, bechol netivotea shalom, hashivenu Adonai elecha ben hashuva, chadesh yaminu kekedem. Continue with Chatzi Kaddish on the bottom of page 222, which will be followed by a Hechi Kedusha of the Mincha Amidah. I'll say the first couple of pages aloud. Everyone can join in for the Kedusha, and then I invite you to go back to page 223 and say your own Amidah. Ika David Kadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'alma Divra Kirtei Ve'amlich Malchutei B'chai Echon U'vyom Echon U'v'chai Dechol Beit Yisrael Bagalav Yizman Kariv Imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Omei Omaya Yiparach V'ishtabach V'yipar V'tromam V'yitnaseh V'tadar V'taleh V'talal Shemei Kudasha B'richu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Yaakov V'Zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem L'Ma'an Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer V'Foked U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah Atagi Bor Leolam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Atarav Leoshia Morid Hatal Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayim Eitim Brachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Rofech Cholim Atir Asurim Mekayim Unatoli Shenei Afar Michamocha Bal Gibarot Umido Melach Melech Memitim Chayim Atzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Atala Chayot Mitim Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hametim. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam kashem shemakti shimo tov b'shmei maram kakatuv ayad neviyacha v'kara zeh el zeh v'amar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavot, Melech haaretz kevodo, le'umatam Baruch Yomeru. Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo, divrei kodshecha katuv le'mor. Yimloch Adonai Olam, Elohai Yichzion, Lador Vador, Hallelujah. Lador Vador Nagid Godlecha, Netzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu. Mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki al melech hadov v'kadosh ata, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. If you're still saying your personal Amidah, please continue. Otherwise, please join us at the top of page 230. Tzidkatcha tzedek le'olam, v'toratcha emet, v'tzidkatcha Elohim ad marot. Asher asita gedolot Elohim mi chamocha, tzidkatcha keharei el, mishpatecha tahom rabba adam uvehema toshia Adonai. Yika David Kadashame Rabba Be'amad Divrak Yurte Ve'amlich Malchute B'chayachon V'yomechon V'chayedecho Beit Yisrael Bagalav Yizman Kari V'imeru Amen Yeheshme Rabba Mevorach Ve'olamo Me'omayai Yiparach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudasha B'rich Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma V'imeru Amen Tikabel Slotahon Uva Utahon Dechol Yisrael Kadama V'hon Divishmaya V'imeru Amen Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imeru Amen Oseh Shalom B'imramav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imeru Amen Aleinu L'shabeach L'Adon HaKol L'Tekedola Le'otzer Breshit Shelo Asanu Kegoye Haratzot V'lo Samanu Kimishpechot Hadama Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem V'gor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam Anachnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Hakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol ha'aretz bayom ha'u yeh Adonai echad Ushemo Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 232. Yit Gadal V'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divra Kirte V'amlich Malchute B'chayechon U'vyomechon U'vchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman Kari V'imru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Omei Omaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yithadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudasha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen Oseh Shalom B'imromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Invite everyone to grab some nosh, get some food, and we'll start with learning in just a few minutes. I think Ron is the one who plays this. I think Ron is the one who plays this.
They usually bring up the leftovers for Kiddush also. Did they bring up the leftovers for
I don't know if anyone.
Were there leftovers in Kiddush?
There were from the library, yes.
The main sanctuary stuff was usually here by the time that I got there were
There was a ton of fruit. That's okay. Someone, as long as someone ate it in good health.
Yep.
I had my fill this morning. I'm good. I know, I'm There's nothing to complain about
It's the Jewish way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, someone asks me how I am, I say I can't complain, but I will.
I like that. And that's cold reading of Torah like that is
Yeah, that's impossible.
very, that's very challenging. Challenging nonetheless.
Yeah, but you have all of us out here yelling at you, so that makes it easier, right?
Now, does that mean anything to you when I say thanks for the memory?
Oh, I know why you were saying that.
Why do you know that? That was a theme song for an entertainer.
Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. And Bob Cook is also the one that gave Tony Bennett his name. Really,
Bob Cook is the one that named Tony Bennett, Tony Bennett. Oh, I didn't hear it, it was Anthony. He went by Joe. Like Joe Harrison.
Started a little bit late. I know that was my meeting, so
Very exciting. Good going. Best.
Yeah, what did you do? Because my husband chose my son's raised here, even though my husband has taught me, he has I'm trying.
But you're not in Rick's class.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my son and my husband.
Well.
Are you in Rick's class?
Hey, this morning was wonderful. Rick, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I mean, just real beautiful. And he had to mix the Aisha trope with the Aisha trope. When he read the Haftorah, then the Haftorah. It was amazing. It was a stunning display.
We'll see if my family members don't show me along with it.
But it's nice to be with.
This is the third time Daniel tried to teach me, and the third time it's
It's nice being part of
two
it.
times he got so frustrated.
It's nice being part of the group. Rosa is there, and I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
This is the different thing. Other stuff is
Maybe I'll take a little bit.
I like the way they sound. I like the creepy stuff. Not a big stuff.
Oh, it's an egg bagel. I was looking at your bagel.
Celery and peanut juice. I just like it. Like nice, creamy, fluffy. That's how they call it. This is good.
Perfectly average.
You pick them? You pick a blueberry?
I think I can pick them.
That's fun. That's the fun part.
Yo, yeah. I don't know. The other challah that they had, I know, was gluten free. Yeah, yeah, it is. That's the number one thing I miss when I'm not here in LA is having good food. It's so good.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot is allergic to it. So all the more important. We try making all sorts of gluten free challah. My wife Alana.
Oh, okay. I've known people we all these too. You do what?
Alana is allergic to
Soy?
yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's like the
That's almost as bad as corn. I mean, if you, that would be,
yeah.
you never
We
know.
eat really healthy as a result.
That's for sure.
Lots of salad.
Yeah.
Well under that stress.
Thank you. All right. Please finish grabbing your food. Eat, enjoy. We're gonna get started though. So this week's Parsha of Et Hanan has a lot of really important things in it. And we're going to be looking at something that happens before all that stuff. So we get the second telling of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10, we'll call them commandments. That's not a really literal translation, but so we have that. We have the first paragraph of the Shema. But before all of that, and after what we read today, we have this verse at the top of your page. And for the sake of those on Zoom, I'm going to do the reading, although I am going to put one of these here. So it says, Rak Hishamer Lecha, and I'm going to go with this translation for now, but there's a lot of, as we go through the text, the different commentaries, you'll see that there are different ways of understanding even what that means. But take utmost care and watch yourself scrupulously, so that you do not forget the things you saw with your own eyes, and so that they do not fade from your mind as long as you live, and make them known to your children and to your children's children. So before we get into all of the commentaries and looking at what this might mean and putting this in the context of what's going on in the greater Parsha, why do our memories matter? Why do they matter so much that we need to take the utmost care and watch them scrupulously? Yeah.
A lot of times we learn from the things that we did.
We learn from the things that we've done. So our memories are a lesson for us to learn from going forward. Great.
Yes, and if we made mistakes,
Right.
we know we should learn maybe to take some of the corrective measures if we learn from them.
Great. So if we make mistakes, then we can learn from them only if they're in our memory. Other thoughts? Hmm?
Just a part of our life.
It-
Memories is how we live our life, and some of us, our parents may not live with us anymore, but they are in our memories, and so we live with the things that we did with them.
Yeah. It's a way of being able to experience those who aren't here anymore, for sure. Yeah.
It's your sadness and your happiness depending on the conditions at that time.
Can you say a little bit more what you mean by that?
There are times that things are bad, you're part of the pain, and also the joy that you feel when things are working well.
So our emotional memory helps us to calibrate the moment that we're in. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, if our understanding of joy and sadness and every other emotion is calibrated based on previous experiences. So after like the most joyous day in our life, happiness at getting, I don't know, an extra Reese's in our package is going to be a little bit less joyful. And on the other hand, something that's maybe even more joyful than the previous happiest day just feels that much greater. And vice versa on the side of sadness or any other emotion. Yeah.
It seems that when you have a memory, it's something that the memory, you won't get led astray. If you have a memory and it's inculcated and it's deep in your being, your soul, your mind, your heart, then you're less likely to be led astray. But if you don't have that memory, then you can be convinced of anything.
So without the knowledge of what's happened to us, it's a lot easier to be convinced of something that may be based on that experience. Our memories, oddly enough, sometimes our memories do lead us astray.
Lead us astray?
They can sometimes. And
It's the opposite.
sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it can be very helpful to remember the moment, and other times it can be very unhelpful. They've done studies of people, especially with regards to like criminal justice system, that people that witness firsthand witness testimony is some of the least reliable evidence that you can bring in, because our memories can be, we try to make sense of our memories, and sometimes that means that we actually alter the facts. And it can come down to as little as forgetting what color shirt the person was wearing, up to much greater things, but it can actually lead us astray.
We're talking about what we see that God has done. This is not what we see man and circumstance. What God has shown us.
Okay.
We have this
Yeah,
memory,
and we're not
going to be led astray. That's what I was
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit. So it's one thing to talk about the little details, but the critical moments in our life, hopefully the reason that they're critical memories in our life, or critical moments in our life, is because they're ingrained in our memory in a way that affects us going forward. And when we talk about this parsha and get into some of the examples and the what's going on here in the parsha, it becomes a little bit clearer that we are talking about those much more critical moments and less about someone walking out of the store who may have done something, who may have robbed the store or something like that. Yeah.
So I think what we're getting at here, I don't know, I haven't read ahead, but both on a micro level and macro level is our Genesis story, the memory of why we are a nation, the memory of the birth of our tradition, and also if you're talking about your children to your children's children, if you want to bring it into kind of a micro level, where we came from. You know, if someone was talking about parents who passed, it all gives you context for who you are and what your place is in the world, whether on a micro level or on a more individual level.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So if we're talking a little bit more about what's going on in this parsha, then we are talking about, we'll see, it's going to be talking in particular about the experiences in the desert at Har Sinai, all of that. And these are the critical nation formation story, or nation formation moments, I should say. And so all of these things are important because they teach us who we are, where we're coming from. And then that leads into the second question that I was going to get to, which is why do the memories matter for those that come after us? Because it teaches those people, those individuals as well, where they come from and where their place is in the world and all of that. So I'm going to get into we're going to do two commentaries here. We have at once, and then we'll get into them a little bit. Rashi And then Siftei Chachamim, which is kind of a meta commentary on Rashi. He'll make the Rashi a little bit more understandable, I'll say. So, only take heed to thyself, lest thou forget the things. But only then when you do not forget them, but will do them in their correct manner, will you be accounted wise and understanding men. But if you do them in an incorrect manner through forgetfulness, you will be accounted foolish. And then Siftei Chachamim says, will you be considered wise and understanding, etc. Rashi intends to explain why is it written rock only, rock hishamer lecha, which is an exclusionary term, as opposed to hishamer lecha, guard yourself. What is being, for what is being excluded here? Therefore, Rashi says only the rock is referring to the above verse, the verse that comes before this, for that displays your wisdom and your understanding, etc. Under which conditions will you be considered wise and understanding? If you don't forget them. So real quickly, even with the Siftei Chachamim, I think it's important that we're all on the same page. What is Rashi saying here? How is Rashi understanding this verse?
So is Rashi talking more about the Chukim here? He's talking specifically, it's a question, I'm not reading into it. Is he talking specifically about the things that Hashem has told us to do up until this point? Specifically, what laws to follow, how to do things with specificity, or is he just talking kind of generally?
Yeah. The question was whether or not he's talking generally or specifically with regards to the chukim, with the laws, all of that. And yes, he's talking about all these mitzvot that have come before this. Make sure that you do them. It's a negative. He's reading this as a command that, and an understand. Or I'm gonna get this wrong. But he's understanding it as as a command that you need to do the mitzvot, and if you don't do the mitzvot, then you won't be considered wise and understanding. So then, if you're looking at this through the lens of our memories, how can this guide us as we go about life and reflect on our memories?
One thing, when Rashi says, only take heed to thyself, it sounds like he's saying, don't be led astray. Rely on yourself. And make sure that you have it right.
So, in other words, how can we take this going forward? The answer that I'm understanding from you is that we can go forward by making sure that we're actually forming those memories correctly. That in the moment we're being observant of our surroundings, we're being mindful of where we are, what's going on around us, so that the memory is imprinted as accurately as possible, and then it can guide us going forward.
And what's expected of us.
And we can learn from that what's expected of us. So if we think back to a childhood memory where we take a cookie, and then as a result of that, there's some sort of negative consequence that we don't like, the important thing is to remember what happened in that moment, the negative consequence, so that going forward, if we're told don't take the cookie, we don't take the cookie, so that we don't go through the negative experience again. Okay.
Is that wisdom, or is that Pavlovian condition? Like this, what does Rashi mean by wise?
So the question that was just brought up is that wisdom or Pavlovian conditioning? Can it be both? I mean,
Getting to what Rashi means by wisdom.
Yeah, what does Rashi mean by wisdom here? It's let's talk about it for us at least. What's the difference between like smart and wise? They're two words that theoretically mean the same thing, and I would say that they're generally not used the same way.
Well, if we're being commanded to love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our might, I mean, there it is. Straightforward, it's not complicated. associated?
Yeah, Alan?
There was an old line from 8th grade that my son was a big fan of. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit.
line, that has nothing to do with stuff.
Okay. Knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit.
Yeah, exactly. So the quip that was just put out there is that knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. So wisdom is more about guiding our actions. Knowledge is knowing the facts.
That's right.
But wisdom
Well-
comes from making mistakes.
Wisdom comes from making mistakes. Yeah, it certainly can come from making mistakes. It can also come from doing the right thing and learning from that too. But wisdom is something from experience as opposed to facts more often than not.
Well, Dennis Prager said wisdom is not evil. Nobody ever says Hitler was a wise man. Nobody ever says that. I mean, it's not. It doesn't. It's not evil somehow.
So somehow wisdom should be something that guides us towards making the next right action, as opposed to knowledge, which can potentially, or smarts, which can potentially lead us astray.
A lot of cooks are very, very smart people. It takes a lot of smarts to.
Okay. Yeah.
Times I couldn't, how they think this stuff up is amazing, But
Yeah. It's great.
It's just knowledge that's been misdirected.
Yeah. So now knowledge is something that can be used for good purposes or bad purposes. Violent or not, one of the examples thrown out in the room was the atomic bomb. We've used knowledge of nuclear physics both to make energy and to make weapons. Wisdom would be withholding the use of those weapons potentially, and using it only for the purposes that are more peaceful. Great. Let's look at another take and go forward. Ibn Ezra says, its meaning is, should you forget everything, do not forget the day that you stood at Sinai. So I think it reads pretty straightforward, but what's he saying?
You gotta figure out, that's the most important thing. That's the simplest thing to remember. We all were Jews standing at Sinai.
So he's saying, if you're going to forget everything else, don't forget the fact that you stood at Har Sinai, you experienced God, and you have that knowledge of being in the presence of the Holy One. If you're going to forget everything else, don't forget that one experience. Memories can leave our mind as time goes on. I've been told numerous stories of myself as a child that I take for granted happened because my parents tell them consistently. I have no memory of them, especially the stories that happened prior to me having any real language skills. My parents tell a story of me stealing snacks from preschool and handing them out to other people. I'm sure it happened. I do not recall it whatsoever. And it's very possible that it didn't. That being said, this has been one of those stories that has shaped who I want to be, if nothing else, because I know how fondly they tell that story. Here too with Har Sinai, Ibn Ezra is saying, there are many things that happened on the way to Israel. Some of them are pretty bad things that ideally we should remember, that we don't make those mistakes again. Spoiler alert, we're not going to remember as a people. But at the very least, we should remember that moment where we were all one nation at Har Sinai in the presence of God. And I think that gets into the second question that I put there. Why would a memory of Har Sinai be so important? It's one of those moments that is nation building, going back to what was said earlier. If we're going to talk about our memories as being guides of who we are, where we came from and who we are, then those core memories are really important to have in mind. I'm gonna move on then to Sforno, who has another take. He says, Raki Shamer Lecha, even though I have said that you are wise people in the eyes of the Gentile nations, be careful not to absorb the views of the wise men of those nations who deny the existence of God the Creator and God's ability and God's supervision of the universe God has created. They may try to convince you with all kinds of intelligent sounding theories. And then he says, for the second part of the verse, therefore, or you must therefore relate these experiences you had with your own eyes to your children who have not seen such miracles. So what's Forno's take on all this? Perfect summarization. I'm going to do it one more time, not quite as precisely, just for those who are on Zoom and listening in podcast wise and otherwise. Sforno's saying this moment that you had at Har Sinai happened once. It will not happen again. There will be other moments where God intervenes in history, but it's not going to happen like that. And you need to guard that memory because you were there, but your children won't have been there. And your children's children won't have been there or have had those sorts of experiences. You need to tell these stories from generation to generation because there will be people who weren't there who will deny that it ever happened. And therefore, you need to pass the story on. That this needs to be repeated again and again because he's kind of going into what Ibn Ezra was saying. It was a defining moment, and it was a defining moment that we need to keep at our core because otherwise there will be people who try to lead us astray. Yeah.
It's like they say that we're passing out of the living memory of the Holocaust.
Yeah, it feels very important in this moment as I'm probably of one of the last generations to grow up having had experiences with Shoah survivors. And it's important to have had those experiences, hearing firsthand from people who went through those experiences. And therefore, it's also important for me and for everyone in this room who has heard from those survivors to pass those stories on as well. Because because we have a certain level of trustworthiness, having heard it from someone who was there firsthand in a way that maybe doesn't come across from a book or doesn't come across from someone who's heard from someone who's heard from someone who's heard, etc. It goes into Yehuda Halevi's whole theory of why does God exist, says it's kind of this essentially, this idea that we have this book that happened and it's been passed down from generation to generation. And if you went back to the first generation that had Torah, they would have been seen as insane if they put this book out there and said that all these things happened and they didn't happen. They'd have people saying left and right, you can't prove that, that didn't happen. But therefore, he said, but because you can't disprove that, which is kind of, I will admit, shaky ground to stand on, but it's a really hard theory to disprove. Because it's a firsthand experience that was told from generation to generation, you know that it must have happened. Yeah.
The notion is that 600,000 men can't all be wrong.
Exactly. The notion is that 600,000 people couldn't possibly all be telling the same lie, exactly the same way. Yeah.
In my opinion, the Holocaust deniers are anti-Semite. They're bigots. They're just plain bigots. I mean, that's just like during World War II, the people that were isolationists were very pro-Hitler people. They really,
Yeah. Sometimes the people who will.
They have a motive.
Yeah. Sometimes there will be a motive behind trying to disprove something that we know has happened, but ultimately we will know that it happened because we were there or because we heard firsthand from someone who was there, who comes, or in particular in this case, from 600,000 plus people who were there who are all telling the same story. 600,000 plus Jews can't possibly have the same opinion. It's pretty hard to say that they couldn't have, that if they're saying the same thing happened, it didn't happen. We're gonna move on to the last commentary for the sake of time. It's a little bit long. Just hear me out because I think it gets to something. It kind of synthesizes some of what we've said in a really nice way. In particular, it's a shorter version of what Ramban says, which is saying something because I know it's a little bit on the longer side. Only beware and be very much on your guard lest you forget. According to Nachmanides Ramban, these words are not merely part of Moses' speech of admonition, but constitute one of the 365 negative commandments. We must not forget the origin of God's commandment, which we heard at the revelation at Mount Sinai, when God spoke out of the fire, etc., and we witnessed God's awesome glory, etc. So he's saying, I think I might have said earlier that Rashi's saying it's a commandment. I misspoke then. Rashi's saying this is guidance. Ramban and Torah Roch are saying, no, this is an actual mitzvah. Mitzvah. He goes on to say, Moses instructs further, worded as a positive commandment, that we must inform successive generations of the details of that great event. This is important, even though hearing the laws from the mouth of the incomparable prophet Moses would be enough to obligate us to keep them meticulously. So it's one thing for Moses to just say, you should do this. It's another thing for God to say through Moses, you should do this. We would trust what Moses is saying as a leader, even if he was not saying it on God's behalf. But in this case, he is saying it on God's behalf. Where was I? We have had so much proof of the legitimacy of Moses as a prophet that whatever comes out of his mouth is bound to have God's approval. Nonetheless, being reminded that originally these laws were communicated to the people without the use of an intermediary, even one as illustrious as Moses, acts as an anchor to our faith in the sacredness of the Torah. Reminding ourselves of that historic experience of the whole nation at Mount Sinai enables us to call anyone who tries to deny the divine nature of any part of the Torah a liar. It's strong language for sure. Anyone who challenges this, no matter how many miracles they perform, will not be able to shake our faith, as they reveal themselves ultimately as a false prophet. This is why God said to Moses in Exodus 19, chapter 9, or verse 9, that the very fact that the people as a whole would experience an audible communication from God directly would not only strengthen their faith in God, but would also strengthen their faith in Moses as a true mouthpiece of God. By copying down the reports of these events in the Torah, this would enable our children in their time to know all of this is true, that we are not copying down fairy tales. Our children will not accuse us of feeding them lies when they can see that we, as well as our parents, relate to them only what has been written down and copied faithfully, word for word and letter by letter, for many generations. So, very strong. What's he getting at ultimately here?
I would assume that you have an obligation, you have a job to do, to teach, and you make sure that it's done well and properly and correctly.
That not only is it important for us to guard our memories the first half, he's leaning into the second half of it. Those memories are not nearly as important for us as they are for the successive generations that follow. That there's a phrase in organizational life of institutional memory. Institutional memory is paramount to the success of an institution because it allows an institution to not have to experience the mistakes of the past just because there's turnover. That's something that can be lost very easily when there is turnover. But if there's a very strong institutional memory or a strong national memory of what's happened, it allows the outgrowth of that memory to stay firmly rooted. So when we think of the national memory of the USA, thinking of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, all these different things that have been firmly built into a national memory, it doesn't, to a certain extent, even though he's saying all these things are true, he's also kind of getting at the fact that it doesn't matter whether or not they're true as long as they're passed on from generation to generation. There's a fun story I've heard that Paul Revere's ride, if you actually look at what he did, it's not really that impressive. But what sticks with us is the story of him trying to save an entire nation. He didn't ride that far. That's the impressive part. And it would kind of be like saying from here in Pico Robertson to like Santa Monica, which is like something on a horse. But it's not like there's another individual, his name is Israel Bissell. He went a very far way to warn people. The reason that we don't have a national memory of Israel Bissell is because his name doesn't sound as good in a rhyme. The whole story of Paul Revere gets codified in the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, which rhymes a lot better.
What's the name of the young woman, and I mean like teenager, who actually outdid all of them?
Yeah, I can't think of her name either. But yeah, like.
She was like 16 or 17 years old.
But that goes into the idea that national memory can be a formational thing regardless of whether or not it happened. And when you like the outgrowth of what that does for a nation, as we have for many generations as Jews, it's important to pass that down, even if it isn't necessarily based in anything that is 100% factual. So oddly enough, I find that Torah Roch is saying, even though he actively tries to prove time and time again that Har Sinai happened, he's oddly proving the fact that it doesn't matter whether or not it happened, as long as we as a people take the lessons from Har Sinai forward and pass them down from generation to generation. And so my hope for all of us is that we can take the experiences we have, both positive and negative, and teach them to successive generations so that those generations might find even more success than we have in our own life. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to bench, and then we'll quickly move into Mariv. Is there someone who had bread and would be willing to lead us in a Zimun? Yeah, that'd be great.
Page 47 in the bencher. Shir Hamalot Beshuv Adonai et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kecholamim Azim Ale Sechok Pinu Ulshonenu Rina Az Yomeru Vagoim Higdil Adonai La Soti Mele Higdil Adonai La Soti Manu Hayinu Semechim Shuva Adonai et Shuvitenu Ka'afikim Ba'negev Hazorim Bedima Berina Iktoru Haloch Elechu Vacho Nose Meshech Hazara Bo Yavo Verina Nose Alumotav Chavi Ryan of Arech
Yehi Shem Adonai Merach Me'atav Yad Olam.
Yehi Shem Adonai Merach Me'atav Yad Olam. Birshut Chavirai Nerech Alinu Shechalnu Mishalo.
Baruch Alinu Shechalnu Mishalo Tuvo Chayinu.
Baruch Alinu Shechalnu Mishalo Tuvo Chayinu. Baruch Baruch Shemo. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Hazan et Haolam Kulo Betuvo Bechein Bechesed Uvrachamim. Who notain lechem lechol basar ki le'olam chasdo uvtuvo hagadol tamid l'chasar lanu ve'ayachsar lanu mazon l'olam va'ed bavur shemo hagadol ki welzan u'varnes lakol u'meitiv lakol u'mechin mazon lechol beriotav asher bara Baruch atah Adonai Hazanet HaKol Nodecha.
We're going to continue with weekday Mariv, which can be found on page 264 of the Sidor Lev Shalem. Please rise. V'hurachum yekaper avam v'lo yashchi, v'hirba lashiv apo v'lo ya'ir kol chamato, Adonai Hoshia hamelech yaneinu v'yom koreinu, Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'rahim. Maybe see it. Umavir yon umevin laila umavdil ben yom uvein laila Adonai Savot Shemo El Chai v'Kayam Tamim Moch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim Avat Olam Beit Yisrael Amchav Torah Adonai. V'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohim Emne Kosovim. Malchuto biratzon kibu alehem Moshe Miriam uvnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha be'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lo tosef ele malchutecha ra'u v'necha bokei yam lifnei Moshe ze'eli anu v'yamru Adonai moch le'olam va'ed v'ne'amar kifada Adonai Yaakov v'golo miyad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael, Hashkiveinu Eloheinu L'Shalom. Ushmor Teiteinu V'Einu L'Chaim L'Shalom Yataviad Olam Baruch atah Adonai Shomer Amo Yisrael Le'ad. Baruch Adonai L'Olam Amen V'Amen. Baruch Adonai Tzion Moshe. Baruch כי המלכות שלך היא וליומי עד תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשה. Bottom of page 269, please rise, we'll do Chatzi Kaddish, and then continue on into the silent Amidah. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קרתי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה בריך. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. you're still saying your own personal Amidah, please continue. Otherwise, please join us at the top of page 279 for Chatzi Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דיברה קרתי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ומעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קדושה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. Vahi noam Adonai Eloheinu Aleinu Umaaseh Yedenu Konana Aleinu Umaaseh Yedenu Konanehu Yoshev B'Setz Elyon B'Tzel Shaddai Yitona. Yikra'ini ve'enehu imo anochi b'tzara achuatzehu ve'achbedehu orech yamin asbiehu ve'arehu b'shuati orech yamin asbiehu ve'arehu b'shuati. Keep a finger on that page, but turn back to page 216. We're at the first caret on the page. Ata kadosh yoshavti lo Yisrael v'karazeh hozeh v'yamar kadosh 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 Adonai tzavot melech haaretz kevodo. V'tisa'ini ruach ve'eshma acharei kol ra'ash gadol baruch kevod Adonai min kol Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Vayivdechu v'cha yodeh shemecha ki lo azafter dorshecha Adonai Adonai chafetz l'ma'an tzidko yagdil Torah v'yadir. We turn back or we turn forward to where we were previously, page 280 for Kaddish Shalom. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba Be'alma divra kirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'hagala b'zman kariv imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam me'almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shmei dekudasha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Tikabal sloton uvaoton necho Yisrael kadam avahon divi shmaya v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabamin shmaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imrama v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We continue on page 281 with aleinu. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol. Kakatu v'toratecha Adonai yimloch olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'ya Adonai l'melcho kol ha'aretz v'yom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. Kaddish Yatom Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 282. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah Be'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'gala u'vizman kariv himru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yishramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudasha b'richu. Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Continue with Havdalah on page 283 in here, or it's also somewhere. Eftach v'lo efchad, ki ozi v'zimrat ya, Adonai v'yehi li lishua, ushaftem mayim b'sason, mimayne ha-yeshua, l'Adonai ha-yeshua, al amcha v'yirchatecha selah, Adonai Sevaot imanu, Mizgav lanu, Elohei Yaakov Selah, Adonai Sevaot, Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu, La Yehudim, Haita Ora, V'simcha v'sason v'ikar, Ken tiyeh lanu, Kos Yeshuot esa, Uv'shem Adonai ekra, Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai 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 Nai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei minei v'samim. Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai 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 Nai. Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai Nai Nai. Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai 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 Nai. Yain Nai 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 Nai, Yain Nai 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 Nai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei me'orei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh lecho, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael le'amin, ben yom hashvi l'sheshet yemei hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lecho. Ve'akochavim balayla, Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov. Eliyahu hanavi, Eliyahu hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu agiladi, Bimira David, in Mashiach ben David. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, Toda, Rabbi.
Yeah, she's still there.
Yeah. Shavua Tov.
Yes, to you too, Marlies.
Yeah, thank you.
I keep waiting one of these weeks for Miriam Hanaviah to follow Eliyahu Hanavi, but
Oh,
I always do it to myself.
yeah. I don't know that one, I guess.
Oh, I'll email it to you.
Oh,
It's
great. Okay.
Reconstruction, Mr. Rabbi wrote it, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago to parallel. I'll email you.
Okay, thank you. Great.
So once again, you're the two of you, two different places for
Yeah.
this last week too, I think.
Yeah, he usually goes and I don't usually go, but I will go. I think in a couple of weeks, my mother's yurt site is coming up, so I'd like to
be there in person.
Got it. I think, yeah. Yeah, but yeah.
Got it. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, well, how are you doing?
Anyway, thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm okay. A little bit, yeah, little under the weather, so that's why I didn't actually do Havdalah this time. But didn't light my candle. But next, so I was kind of disappointed I couldn't see the candle.
Oh, I thought it was because you were in a different room, but maybe you were in a different room because you weren't doing the candle.
Exactly.
Oh, got it. I don't know why. I think you're usually in your kitchen when you do it, right?
Yeah, I'm usually in the kitchen. We have,
it makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So hopefully next time, or I don't know. Or, anyway. Well, I wish you a good week, Tybal.
Yeah, I should be a better week. The only thing, do you remember Josh Jacobs, the intern?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's at my Cleveland shul, and he was leading the Mincha Ma'arav at Cleveland, and that was very nice. This was the big weekend. The Cleveland shul was welcoming him and his spouse, who will be part-time at the same shul.
Oh, wow. That's nice. Huh.
Yeah, she's a Cleveland native, and she persuaded him.
Mm-hmm.
Or should I say they're newly married? That and real estate prices probably, but that's my introduction.
Yeah, I think he was. I didn't know. Really, I think he was engaged the last time I.
Yeah, they were both ordained from Ziegler and started this week.
That's wonderful.
Anyway, in Cleveland, where she's from. Yeah, it's nice to hear the familiar voice, and I always love the small Jewish world.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, Shavua Tov next week. Oh, and whatever you do for Tisha B'Av, may it be a significant.
Yeah,
right,
thank you.
That's coming up, I think, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's next to Wednesday night, Thursday. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Okay, same to you. Thank you.